So topic using the ACDC portal, I'll be explaining exactly what that is, but the goal is for developing a full digital workflow of as constructed or as built drawing data, essentially going from CAD to GIS automatically, validated data online. And so thank you for joining us. Let's jump right in. So what ACDC is, it stands for, the acronym actually is as constructed drawing certification is where it comes from. And what we're trying to do here, and have in fact this product's been going for 15 years already, is provide a comprehensive solution for automating the workflow, creation, validation, and loading of data from as-built directly into CAD, directly into GIS. And so there are a couple of challenges in there. We're going to go into them. It's a no-brainer. Why can't you set up a drawing, get the attributes? It's used as a coordinate accurate for survey coordinate accurate drawing, and it's used for construction. So they really should know everything about everything that's getting put down there, what's been removed, etc. And what we want, and that's the focus of this product, is to get that data directly into GIS without having to recapture it or reconstitute it, etc. So that's essentially what we're looking at. And so I'll go into that right now. The challenges, of course, are many, and most of you are probably familiar with these challenges. The first one is a lot of folks, first of all, they may not even get a CAD drawing. They might just get PDF. So that's a whole different discussion. Actually, we have pretty comprehensive tools for that. If you're interested in that, we're applying AI now onto PDF drawings. You can basically take the PDF document and we'll scan it and it'll auto-classify. And if it has meets and bounds, we can read those and create the geometry directly. So a whole lot of that, different webinar. But if you are getting a CAD drawing, the problem there is, great, I can see this picture maybe, and a lot of tools can open those drawings and look at them. The biggest challenge is if you're getting drawings from multiple sources and they're all structured differently, or they're not complete or not comprehensive. And how do you even know they're not complete? And you can't automate something if it's inconsistent. Essentially what you're left with is manual recapture and cleanup. So yeah, you might get dots and points, but you've got to go and drill down to the actual attributes, and that may mean you're looking at sections and everything else. So it can be a very difficult challenge. It also can be endless back and forth. Oh, what's in this data? Or even after sign off sometimes, come, we don't know what this is. Could you go and resurvey it or do whatever you want to do? There's also a delay. It takes time to go through it. It's manual. And so the big challenge is for GIS teams, which is where we come from, getting clean, complete data from CAD drawings into ArcGIS Online or into your GIS itself directly. It remains a pretty frustrating bottleneck. Even if you get using the Autodesk relationship with Esri, if you're using Esri, you can open those drawings pretty good now. But actually checking that all the data you want is there, that it's formatted in the way that you can consume it directly, those are big challenges. And so that's really where this comes in. As I said, most CAD drawings can be opened by just about any system. The real challenge is getting the associated attribute data from the drawing for your GIS purposes, meaning that you know what the feature types are. That's fairly easy, but also what attributes, are they consistent? Do they fit your domain values? And is it a segmented network? Are you starting to build out the utility network, etc.? So that is where ACDC comes in. So let's take a little quick look. A simple diagram, but let's step back and look at a little cameo going from the beginning. So people draw stuff in CAD drawings. ACDC actually has a bunch of tools on the back end that will look at your Esri schema or your any GIS schema for that matter, including our products like our Mansus product, and help you generate and create the CAD standard itself, align that with your feature names, pull in the domain values, and even produce CAD menus that have your own features and everything in there. So that this first stage, somebody drawing a drawing, to be able to automate the validation of that, and I'll come back to what I mean by, well, what do we mean by validation? What do you check, etc. But to automate this process, you have to have consistent data in the CAD drawings. And that's not just layer names. That's, okay, where are the attributes? Are they in blocks? Are they object data? Are they on leader lines? Are they just text next to something? Are they 3D objects? Where is it? And if it's a 3D object, is it in your data sets? Is it as the object itself, or is it extended information that they've customized on top of those objects? And all of that is where the problem starts, because you have to understand that. And you really can't expect your GIS person to have a knowledge of every single other engineering company's way in which they structure these things. So draw the drawing, ACDC, give them the tools to draw it consistently. That way we can automate it and we can align that data so that it fits with what you want. What we do in ACDC is they can have an online account in the ACDC portal. We've been on Microsoft Azure for what, coming up 7 years now. We moved the whole desktop ACDC product that started out 15 years ago. We've made that so that it parallels in the portal, and you can literally take a drawing, log into the portal, I'll show it to you in a minute, and drag and drop a drawing straight into the portal. It'll go and validate it and then give you the results. And so it will mark any and all errors. I'll show you that in just a minute and tell you what it is. And what it runs is a set of rules. Yes, fully customizable. You can add your own rules. We check in things like the basics. Do you have this attribute? Is it a consistent value? Does it have, if you look just at attributes, is it within a range of values? Is it comply with the domain value, etc.? On the spatial side, are polygons closed? Is everything snapped? Do we have isolated nodes if you're using utility networks? So you can't give me a hydrant without a stub on it, or you can't give me a catch basin without draining somewhere, or you can't put a blow-off valve of a water onto a sewer pipe, that sort of stuff. All sorts of weird errors. And then you can get complicated too. You can have relationships between different features, so where they can be containment or proximity. So containment, you can't give me, I'll give you a silly example, you can't give me a play structure unless it's inside a playground. Okay, that would be a containment. Or you could do proximity, no water meter or hydrant within 6 or 10 feet of a electric substation, for example, stuff like that. So they're completely different features. All we're looking at is proximity. And then you can get on utility networks, we have a strength there. You can also do things like do the actual upstream invert elevations coming into a point feature, whatever it happens to be. Are they consistent with the direction of the line, and are the elevations consistent? And you can check the from and tos and build out essentially the core basis for a utility network. You still have to do a little bit of checking and work, but that can be built. So you upload a drawing, you validate it. If it fails, in other words, it doesn't comply with any of the rules assigned. So we have off-the-shelf rules, but you can build anything you like. And you could have 3 or you could have 300. If it fails, we mark every single error. We put errors on different layers in the CAD drawing. We set them as different colors. We add comments on them to say, nope, this is the incorrect domain value, or this line is isolated. Sometimes in CAD drawings, you'll have all sorts of stuff. You can have an embedded line that's hiding itself underneath another line, but it's a short segment, and then it's going to fail because it's not going to have a start and end, or it's going to be that sort of thing. So we'll flag all of those. The person who uploaded the drawing can look at it and say, okay, I got all the errors. I can walk through this punch list. I know exactly where in the drawing. I know exactly what I can fix it, resubmit. And they'll continue that until it passes. If it passes, then here I'm showing what they would see as the non-graphic part of where they submit. I'll show you the actual site in a minute. So this person has uploaded 35 drawings that have failed. And out of that, then there are then 15, an additional 15 uploads which have been successful. So 1 in 3 or 1 in 4. So third or fourth time, you get it right, you fixed all the errors, and it only takes a few minutes. So that there is already a change in the workflow for most companies. If you're using ACDC portal, it literally means you will not even look as the organization. You will not even look at a drawing until it has passed. So they self-validate before it even gets to you. And that way, when you look into the drawing, you know all of those checks already been done. At the point where it passes, the user who uploaded the drawing can right mouse button and say it is ready for review, which then fires off a whole workflow. And you can set this up for you as your organization. If it's this kind of project, then go and send info there and say, hey, there's a plan that's ready. Also, the engineering company or draftsperson can put a whole lot of drawings in there and have them ready and then submit the whole lot all at once, that sort of thing. So this is a nice workflow because it controls the drawing. It gives people access. So they can go right in on a drawing and look at it. But once it's passed, you can accept or reject it as the organization. If you reject it, you can add documents to say this is what's wrong, you didn't comply with this easement, whatever, here's the rules, go and try again, that sort of thing. And also, obviously, once it's validated, the data is in fact already good to go. We can output to any GIS format. We use OGC compliant outputs, one of which, so here's the data in, say, QGIS. You can see feature layers, you can see attributes, that sort of thing. You can also, obviously, anytime in the portal, if there's any drawing, you can use the Autodesk viewer embedded in our portal to look at any submission and look at that, which is useful because if you're working on your desktop drawing the CAD drawing, even if it's a failed drawing, you can open it in the viewer, see the errors online and fix them in your drawing and then resubmit. So it gives you a dual and it's easy. But the other part is any of these users can open the CAD drawing without needing AutoCAD or training. They can just check it in a viewer. Of course, you can also then set up a collaboration with ArcGIS Online. I'll look at that just a minute, and publish that data so that it comes out straight there. So within, I don't know, less than 5 to 10 minutes, you can take a drawing, it's passed, it's ready, and it'll be in your portal of your organization. So that is the high level overview right there. We do sometimes, we can also configure to output to 3D viewers. So what it means is you can go from as constructed drawing to GIS in a matter of minutes, and you can have good data, and that's the overview. So how do we do that? So the real question is, what's your current process? This is a real world example of a process of a drawing. So they'll have meetings up front and set up, there's what we want as the drawing. Some organizations don't really even give standards, and that's fine. We can help with CAD standards. But actually, you need a GIS standard and a CAD standard because you want to know how to draw it and what attributes and what those attributes are called and what's allowed or not. There's usually a review phase, and then there's also a delivery phase of some form of documents, PDF, DWGs, or both. And this may well be in a document management system, even a system that stores the PDFs and archives them, and it may even have a legal requirement of a wet signature on the PDF, and that's all fine. But that's typical, and then the GIS folks usually get it right at the end, and they've got to just figure out what to do. So as I said, if you haven't got consistent inputs, this job becomes a learn. So now essentially the GIS people have to learn all of the nuances of how do people draw stuff, how do they represent it, where's the info, oh, and this data from this company comes in different from that one, etc. And the irony of it is the drawings themselves contain enough coordinate, precision, attributes, and details to build it so people actually knew what it was. So there's no reason you can't automate that. Technologically, it's actually not that difficult. There are a lot of moving parts, yes, but not that difficult. What we add to that is the ACDC workflow. So that's what this changes. So there's a standard already set. People can download it. They can draw stuff. So that reduces the initial meeting, and you do need to have communication. So literally, someone can go to the portal. You as an organization can set up a project, invite them to submit to that project. They can go to the portal, download, and start working. And if you provide sufficient documentation, which we help you do, then they can actually self-serve, particularly if they've done more than one project with you. When it submits, that's what we walk through here. You will get then these steps, and you will approve or not and have some sign off there. And of course, construction goes on. So the timeline is different than just the logic of the workflow. And then you'll get a drawing file here. You can get a PDF. You can go save that in your document management system and the archives for legal purposes. That's all fine. What we're interested in is in the data in this drawing should then be ready to go. And at this point, the data is already there. It's already in your system. And your GIS folks are going to do the valuable work of how does this tie in with our existing data? Was this stuff abandoned? Does it link in? And double check it and then put it in the data of record, and you're done. So literally has a huge impact on what goes on there pretty much straight away. So what happens here is you get project data with attributes for the ArcGIS Online thing. You can set up a collaboration at this point, And ACDC comes with a set of tools where you can get it to automatically generate the tokens. So you give it some tokens, we generate the file, push it back there. Technically, we're actually publishing to our ArcGIS Online account and setting up a collaboration with your ArcGIS Online account. And so you determine what project, where you want it published in your ArcGIS Online. And so we can configure that, but literally you push the button and you will get your data in your particular ArcGIS Online, and you can accept or reject, etc. There's also REST services made available from our ArcGIS Online setup so that you can control those and get them anywhere. So if we look at the current data, there's just CAD drawings can be like this. And you're asking your GIS person to figure it out. And so there can be all the sections and all of that. And if you zoom right in on that, so if we go to a little section here, it gets pretty complicated, and there's stuff from leader lines and all of that, and there's data that's in the section. It's there. If it's a civil 3D drawing, this stuff is still there, but it's interesting because we're actually dealing with a full workflow, and often the design's fully 3D. A lot of stuff gets done there, but it goes out to construction, and often the drawings are flattened, so actually the as-built becomes not the civil 3D drawing per se, but a flattened CAD drawing, which still needs all of those attributes, and they will have ways of pulling those out. And so this is the result of where we go, and that'll get marked up even with red lines. And you're going to need to tell folks, no, we don't want the PDF. You can give that as well. We want all of the markouts in the CAD drawing that you use to create this PDF, and we want those as a XREF drawing just for the disciplines we're interested in. So if you've got water, sewer, storm, or cadastral or easements, try and keep each of those in its own XREF drawing, and they can still make all of this. It's just then they can also give you each of those individual drawings, and you can validate those and send them to different departments and etc., that sort of thing. So what we do in ACDC is we set up how they draw this and where the attributes go, and control and provide them the tools to build that, so that they can literally go from that drawing, which is really just a rework of the ones you saw before, and then have all of this stuff fully attributed with all of its info. And that's what happens. So that's how we achieve this workflow. So I'll zip through this. If we step back and look at the product, 10 years ago, it started here where we were on a heavy app on top of AutoCAD on the desktop, or AutoCAD map, or Civil 3D technically. And in there we can connect to your GIS, whatever that is. If it's Open Tables or if it's Esri, you can connect to it. And so this still remains the main place where we connect, get GIS stuff, read the Esri schema, build out the CAD stuff, and set up what we call the templates or the validation set, and assign the rules, etc. So the ACDC app is still where you do that. But once you set up a configuration set, we have a mirror in the portal, and you can upload your configuration set, and you control then the projects, and it brings with it all the cloud-based stuff where you can invite people to projects, give them different roles, etc. And then obviously people can go in, and if you're sitting here and you're a draftsperson, you'll go to the portal, download your stuff, get set up, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Draw a drawing, submit it to the portal, and if it's done, it pushes all the way out, basically like I showed you in that first slide. And then you've got your GIS data, and you are good to go. So the goal is to go from there to there and do that in a matter of minutes, and that's pretty easy. So what we do is we want fully attributed CAD. And so one of the challenges in AutoCAD is they don't check the values. It's free format, building out values here. And it could be anything. This is just text field. It doesn't even know it's numeric. So we can override that and configure to say, no, this is a field here that needs a domain value, and that is the domain value. Now, they don't support domain values here. If you then upload to the portal, and maybe at this point I should jump right to that. Let's go to the ACDC portal. And so if you go to asconstructor.com, you're going to need an account. But if you do go there, there is a website. You may have been there already. There's a whole lot of info. You can look at it here. There's even a set of pages for ArcGIS Online. There's a blog. You can go read case studies, and you can walk through all sorts of stuff from different places. But you can also log in there. So if you log in, it'll pop up a screen that looks like this, and you can log in. And this is the actual workhorse of getting there. I've already logged in. This is me, and I have a dashboard, and I've just set it up here. So if you come in and log in and you want to set up a project, I'm active on this project. So I can submit validations. I can download the stuff to self-serve. So hands-on intro. There's even a little exercise to teach yourself common errors and fixes, how to install and config, and then actually even an automated output of the CAD and GIS standard if you really want to use that. And then the entire toolkit. So that would be CAD templates, any configuration check files, and that sort of stuff. You can build that in, any documents they would need for this project. If I switch gears a little, if I'm the admin, I can come in and say, you know what? I can manage our organization, put my logos, manage users, manage officers, developers, projects. I can go in and check what projects do we have. I can assign them. I can action them. I can check the developers on them. I can make it active, inactive, set documents to go with it, all of that stuff. So there's a nice portal to do that. You'll also notice the validation set. So all of those rules I talked about, you save that in a validation set. And you actually can give it your own info, code it, and we give guidelines as to how should you, different versions. Once you start a project and you've got an engineering company working on a project, you probably want to keep that validation set for that project. If the project, if you change it, so say next project along, it might be different, but you might also improve and say, you know what, we needed to add this other check or tweak this or tweak that. You just save it as another validation set. And our best practice is then when you start the new project, assign that new validation set, and that sort of allows you to get there. The other thing you can do under admin is there's also stats. You can go and do reports on here. You can set up the notification sets, what documents are standard ones. You can have user groups and the likes. There's project documents, and you can set that, and documents themselves. Here's those ones referenced there. So you set that up. There's training available. You can go look for that straight on the website, look at the videos and that sort of thing. So that's all useful. The other one is, let's go to the actual drawing. So let's just jump all the way back and say, let's look at, so I'm admin. I can actually look at, looks like we've been busy and those have failed. So they've got things. So this is where you submit new. You can go here and you can choose your, if you're an engineering company, you could actually be working for multiple different entities and you choose a project that they've assigned. So these guys have got a couple going on. There's obviously a test one and then some others. A little telecom. I know at the moment they've got a bunch of telecom things going on. You literally just drag and drop your CAD drawing, but then you can set a name and a description and that sort of thing. Once you drag and drop it, it runs through this process. You'll see there's a bunch here. Maybe I go to a while ago. You'll see there was a bunch going on there. It'll fail or pass. So if it's failed, then you're going to try it again. If it has passed, you can set for review. You can accept it. So this is probably a good page here. Maybe I'll go to one here and check it and say, yeah, what was the problem on one of these? Yeah, so here we go. So I'll just pop this one out. So here's one that failed. I know this was a test, so I was involved in this one, and I don't want to get into the real data, but there were 3 errors. You can see what they are. These were the features submitted. This was the ones that were not submitted. So these guys have a whole lot there. So you can see what was there. You can also on any one of them say, hang on a minute, go and actually view that drawing. This is a very simple drawing, by the way, so don't be underwhelmed. But you can view it in the Autodesk viewer. And basically you can see there's an error, there's an error. If I click on the error, it will actually tell you incorrect object type on this layer. We've just tweaked the Autodesk viewer a little so that you can see the custom errors. You can check those, and then also you can get any attributes that might be there. You can actually even go and pull on those. So if I click on something else, we can go in and look at a bunch of information in here, and you can zoom in and out and see this. So this is just a CAD drawing that you're looking at in a viewer. Once it's passed, you have a few other options, and actually let's go to a more everyday one. Let's go here. So let's look at one of these. I'll just pick one. So if it's passed, you can set it to convert to the output, and it's complete and it's ready for review. Ready for review is this one. So let's just pop this guy up. So here you'll see the engineering company has said it's ready for review. You'll notice the validation set is listed in here. The entities are there. So this is a water one, and it's ready for review, and there's only 5 entities, so not a big deal. You can have hundreds of entities. It's no problem. So if it's been accepted, so any of these we would expect to work. So if we go here, this one's been accepted. It looks like it's a telecom, so there's a conduit, a handhold, and the project where it is. So here, I can obviously view that as a drawing, and then also I can look at it, but it's accepted. So now the asset owner, city and county in this instance, they've actually looked at it and accepted it. And that would then automatically feed back to the engineering company. This viewer caches out a web version, so if it hasn't been looked at in a while, it generates it. So let's just go and look at it straight in ArcGIS. So with this one, we did set up a collaboration, which is why I'm using that. So if I click on that, it's going to ask me to log in. And so basically, this is going to get that drawing and pop it straight into a collaborative workspace. Once again, I said it's a pretty simple setup. If we zoom out a little, the project is there. So let's turn off that actually. All this really is a handhole and a conduit. You can set up whatever's in your workspace here. But let's say I'm interested in this guy and I say, give me the properties. So this is the handle. So that'll be that little dot there. And what I want to do is show the info in the fields. So here you can see that even though it's just a little dot, there's a fair amount of info. What's the size, contract number? Those were automatically pulled out of the ACDC config, where you can say which features get assigned that stuff automatically, what are the standards, and you can actually get the person to draw that themselves. And it pulls out, there's a default owner. Say these would be the attributes on this simple one. If we did a same thing on the actual line, points are actually quite easy to get data on, but lines themselves. So let's go to properties. What I'm showing you is the attributes and building that out on this guy. So now you've got a few more diameters, number of cables created by length, etc. And so we can also output as a shape file. So if you wanted to, you could get these as shape files instead of ArcGIS Online. But basically that, in short, is pulling it over from a CAD drawing straight into here. And you can have complicated CAD drawings as well. If I go back to my PowerPoint, you'll see where that's at. Essentially, all of these disciplines are storm, sewer, water, natural gas, telecom, civil, all straight into one drawing, validated, popped right out. So that's pretty much where you go. How do you build it? You start with whatever standards you may have. Typically the GIS database. A lot of folks will say, we don't have a standard. And I'll say, well, that's not quite true. You need to give yourself more credit. If you have a GIS, you already are defining how you store things, what you store, what are valid values. And so you start with that and you build it out. The real trick is, what about a CAD standard? We marry all of those together. And you as the asset owner, if you're obviously the organization doing it, you set up the configuration, the validation, and what gets converted. In other words, what features does it go to? And we can actually populate a GIS and a CMMS at the same time. So that's essentially at a very high level. I can get into this. This is the hard work because you have to configure stuff across from there. And so once you've set up a project and your configuration and validation set, you can just pop it up there. And so projects are the project name, who do you invite to it, what are the documents that go with it, and then they can log in separately. So this has a dual login version where the asset owner or the admin folks can look and set up, whereas the users, in this case an engineering construction company or a draftsperson internally or externally, can go in and log in and go and build this out. So if they log in, they load the project and do the workflow that I showed you, and they go through this. So once they submit, if it fails, they fix it, they go around until it's ready to go. And so this is just a diagram of the whole workflow to get those notifications and get the data into your system. So that's there. Yeah, so you can manage projects, you can set that up. People often ask, hang on a minute, what about getting set up and all of that? That's a fair amount of work. And so we have tools to deal with that as well. You can set up workflows as well, who goes from where to what, etc. But typically you're going to look at the GIS data and then the CAD data. So on GIS, fairly simple. Don't worry about the nomenclature. So our domain values happen to be table names with an LU for a lookup. But there's data types, things that you have to account for. There's also rules that you can build into your configuration for snapping and for spatial in terms of checking that whole topological build out that ACDC will do for you. A really good tool for getting yourselves the core start of a utility network. You still have to apply a few other things, but basically you're already there with a logical, explicit geometries already checked for you. On the CAD side, so this is an example. If I go page up, the GIS data, that's what you want. On the CAD, you have to tell people, hang on, what layer name should I use? Do I use a block? If I do, what attributes go on the block? Are they mandatory? or not. We do allow for what we call mandatory values or not. And then to pass validation, you are allowed to set it as a warning, meaning that we would like this data, but we're not going to fail your validation if you don't give us that data. So that's where that's at. And you can build it out. If you're using blocks, you can set what's the tag, is it visible, and what's the order. This really helps data capture so that somebody can go in and actually build that out. On ACDC, the configurator, you can use a CAD spreadsheet to build out those things, but at the end of the day, it goes like this. So say I looked at a linear feature. So this is a pipe. You can allow and configure. So this is the actual configurator in the product on the desktop. And so it's all of the values are stored in a database. You can populate that through the back end as well. But you'll see object here. It'll say, what's the layer name? Does it have a block associated? What's the output? And then if you look at the attributes for that, this is once again a very simple example. There's attributes. Some stuff can come from what we call a common block in that drawing that contains attributes, which we then bulk load across all of the features of that type. And you can turn it on and off. But that's very useful. But you can also see you got all of the inverts and row elevations, the start and ends, diameters, material. And on that, you can then go in and build out the lookup tables. We even allow you to build menus. Why do we use menus? We use menus so that the CAD person can look at a menu like this to say, I want to put in sewer storm, whatever. And we do have off-the-shelf models for these, but you can configure in here. You can configure this yourself to build out any and all of these. And that is very useful because now when the person's drawing something, they literally go to a menu and they read it and they click on it. And this is why we use menus, because it's like a macro. It says, oh, make this the active layer. So now the person doesn't have to learn the layer names. They can use readable text. They also, if we know it's a point feature, we'll know the point feature for this kind of asset is going to be this particular symbology, and we know it's going to have these attributes. So we can automatically pop that up and put it in there and set it as active. So they don't have to learn the names of specific blocks or specific things, and they can just build that out. The attribute I mentioned, so here's an example. You'll see it's got the validation set in use, but instead of having just a blank dialogue with free-form text, you can see what's mandatory with little asterisks. You can any drop downs. And so what this is effectively a text file that you ship with your template and you use with the attributor, but it is an embodiment for offline use of your domain values and associated with any column in your feature setup. So very useful because now the CAD person can once again just use text readable. And so here, these can be descriptives, but the actual value put into the database could be the real code that you want. And they can actually see those on and off as well. So that's very useful. And so various standards. This one is an Australian example. So this one here, by the way, is our off-the-shelf data model. So we have data models since we've been in business 25 years in 3 different geos, and we've got every discipline you want, really. So we just took that and made an off-the-shelf data model for that, using in the US, the national CAD standard is the CAD data format, and using our data models for effectively from our Munsys product to manage utility and network systems. If you're not familiar with it, that's a whole other webinar. But anyway, the fact is we have just that I can show you all of this as a default, but it's a pretty good start point from there. But you can build everything custom, your own features, your own attributes, your own domain values, all of that sort of thing. This one, as I said, is an Australian example. Their data standards are nuts and firm. And this particular example, like for example, putting in a pump, I think they're asking for 40 different attributes and literally all are mandatory. So the poor CAD person, but the attribute is really useful because it shows you these are mandatory, these are the main values, etc. And you can have help and it'll pop it straight down. So you can build that out in that. The attributor is in fact simple text files as the definitions that you need to use. So it's actually configurable. And we did that on purpose just to allow for folks to be able to customize it if you want to. So last thing then to finish up. So workflows, I think I showed you that. You can build them out and that's useful, but essentially your output could be anything to any GIS. Here's, this is actually that same area with some telecom, but also you'll notice all of the whole phase of this. So actually we did, this is the example of 2 bits of data, the cadastral over there, which has got blocks, parcels, easements, right-of-ways and that sort of stuff. And then over here, there's water, sewer and storm actually going in there. And here's some of the telecom, just to give you a bit of an example. So in essence, That is how we go from start to finish on this, which I walked you through already, but essentially ArcGIS Online, and then from start to finish. Just a couple of things. We looked at our top 10 customers, and they're doing over 1,000 validations a year. And we said over the last 4 years or so, what has happened for how long it takes to process. And this is not the few minutes to do the data validation in the portal. This is the workflow process. So this is people time. And the average among that lot was here at the 25 something days. And that has changed to just 2 days, basically allowing for a little back and forth, a little intra-department and people getting to it. The other thing is the confidence in the data. This is bad quadrant to be in, right? That's low confidence and a lot of time. This is the one to be in, where you've got very high confidence, over 90%, and a very short turnaround. And from those folks, really, it's a no-brainer. The number of hours that are saved for these folks on those projects, the average was 461 days was saved per year. So that's nearly a couple of people, or two and two-thirds. That's a lot of time, and this is very significant. So if you're doing less than 10 projects in a year, or even 5, 10's probably the break even. It's not worth the effort. Just go capture the data, even if you had to draw it by hand. But if you're doing 5 or more, maybe 10, definitely 10 or more projects in a year, then this thing will save you on every single project, and your data will be substantially better. Not because people are not capable of capturing that data, but because it's automated checks and it's standardized. You still need people to go check the data. And that's the valuable stuff. How does it tie in? What do I decommission? And where do I publish? And what about all the downstream other maps and publishing and et cetera that goes with it and that sort of stuff? And what we found is that folks, because this workflow is easy, these folks here will take this and actually turn it into 2 phases, because it's literally a matter of minutes once you've configured. And so what we've done there is these folks will typically have 2 workflow, a minimum of 2. One will be at as designed phase for sign off of the design. And so at that point, they already then have the proposed design here, and they'll use a simpler validation set, checking fewer things because they're not quite figured yet. But because it's so easy, it's really at the push of a button, you already have the project stuff available on your system, and it's flagged. You can set it for this validation, set to output it and flag it as it's proposed or future or whatever, but everyone can see the map. And then when it comes to the final one, you run it for real and you do every last column with every last attribute and you fill it all out. So that is the other change that happens there. So that is essentially the presentation. I've worked through a lot of different things, but there are a few things for ACDC. You want to accept CAD and GIS data, so actually people can put a shapefile in instead of a DWG and run through the same validation. We also output multiple GIS formats, so we can write directly to your Esri environment, and we can pull in your GIS standard as well. So that effectively is the comprehensive solution for that workflow of CAD-to-GIS with validation, all GIS data focused.
You can find us online. OpenSpatial.com is our overall company site, and then asconstructed.com is the site that Colin was showing towards the beginning of this. So any additional information there, those are great resources to start. Reach out if you'd like a personal demo of any sort as well. We're more than happy to connect and contextualize it for your specific use cases as well. I do want to point out we will be having some more exciting news and webinars coming up soon. So do keep an eye on openspatial.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. Tend to publish quite a few of our case studies, product updates, and just some industry news as well.
We also have a cloud setup. If you look at openspatialcloud.com, you'll find a whole lot of items there as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful day.